Today we're going to be talking about determining number of solutions from an equation. If you recall, there are three types or three kinds. You could have one solution, and that means only one number will work. So after you solve the equation, you'll be left with a variable is equal to a number. So if you're left with something like x equals -3, that means you have one solution, and -3 is the only number that will make that equation true. Then we have no solution. That's where you're left with a false statement, meaning you're left over with something like 7 equals 2, and we know that that is not true, that 7 is not equal to 2, so that means there is no solution. The last kind is infinite or many solutions. When you solve the equation and you're left with something like -3 equals -3 or x equals x, where it's the same on both sides of the equal sign, that is a true statement, and that means you have infinite many solutions because any number you plug in will make that equation work out. So now that we know the three types, let's take a quick look at what those would look like solving the equation and how we know once we've solved it what to say we have. So if we start off with an equation like 4x plus 2 equals 10. The first thing I want to do is get my variable by itself. So I'm going to use inverse operations to move this 2 to the other side. So because it says plus 2, I'm going to actually do subtract 2 from both sides. 2 minus 2, that cancels out and gives me 0. So I'm just going to bring down my 4x. 10 minus 2 gives me 8. Now I know the last step to solve this equation is to do the opposite or inverse. Instead of multiplying my variable by 4, I'm going to do the opposite and divide it by 4. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. 4 divided by 4 gives me 1, and 1x is the same thing as x. And 8 divided by 4 gives me 2. Now I have x equals 2. That means when I have a variable equal to a specific number, that means this is a one solution equation. Meaning when I plug this back in to check it, 2 is the only number that will make this side equal 10 after I check it. So if we were to check it, in place of x, we're plugging in our answer, and we want to know, does this side really equal 10? So 4 times 2 is 8. Bring down. 8 plus 2 is 10. And yes, both sides were 10. We checked it. We know that x equals 2 is my one solution answer. So let's take a look at another example. How about if we have something like 2x plus 3 is equal to 2x plus 7. We know that in an equation our goal is to get our variable by itself. So I have x's on both sides of the equal sign. I want to get all of my x's to one side and all of my just numbers to the opposite side. Typically, it doesn't matter which way you move things, you will still end up with the same final answer. I'm just going to move my 2x. Now, technically, yes, I could move my 3, or I could move this 2x, or I could move this 7. You're going to get the same answer. So if I subtract it on this side of my equal sign, then I have to subtract it over here. And I use subtraction because, remember, we have to do the opposite or inverse. So 2x minus 2x, that cancels out. I'm just going to bring down my 3. 2x minus 2x, well, that also cancels out or equals 0. I'm just going to bring down my plus 7 or 7. As you can see, I'm left over, it says 3 equals 7. Last time I checked, 3 was not the same as 7, so we know that is not true. And because we're left with a statement that is not true, this has no solutions. Anytime you're left with an answer, a statement that is not true, that is no solutions. That means it doesn't matter what number we plug in for x, it will never work out to where both sides are equal. For example, if I plugged in a 1 for x, both sides will not equal the same number. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 plus 3 is 5. Well, over here, 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 plus 7 is 9. That is not equal. So when you are left with a false statement, you have no solutions. Let's take a look at one more kind where we could have infinite solutions. So let's try one maybe with some distributive. So if I have 4 times the quantity of x plus 1 equals, and then on this side we're going to have 4x plus 4. The first thing that we need to do on this one is we need to distribute with our 4. So that means we're going to multiply 4 by each term, number, variable inside. So 4 times x gives me 4x. 4 times 1 gives me 4. I'm just going to bring all of this stuff down. 4x plus 4. Now some of you might catch on right now that both sides are exactly the same. Positive 4x, positive 4x, plus 4, plus 4. This means we have infinite number of solutions, but maybe you didn't notice right there and you wanted to keep going. So let's keep going. You can move anything you want. You're still going to get the same answer. We could all pick something different to move and we'd still end up with the same answer. I'm just going to move this 4x, so I have to do the opposite. Right now it's a positive 4x, so I'm going to subtract. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other. So if I subtract it on this side of the equal sign, I have to subtract it on this side of the equal sign. 4x minus 4x is 0. I don't have to put my 0. I'm just going to bring down my 4. 4x minus 4x, those cancel out or equals 0. And I'm going to bring down my 4. This says 4 equals 4, and that is true. 4 is equal to 4. That's a true statement. So anytime there is a true statement left, remember that means we have infinite or many solutions. So that means it doesn't matter what number we choose to plug in for x, both sides will always be equal to each other. Both sides will always be equal to each other. Now, if you chose, I want to do this one again, but show you that it won't matter. So what do we have? We had 4x plus 4 equals 4x plus 4. If I move this 4 instead, I'm left with 4x equals 4x. That is true. That is a true statement. I could also keep going, and I could say, well, I can divide both sides by 4. Now I'm left with x equals x. That is also a true statement. So when it's an infinite number of solutions, there are many times along the way where you would be able to tell that both sides were equal to each other and name it as infinite solutions. I hope this helps, and I hope you guys are doing well. Goodbye.